You may have heard that the Roth has a 5-year rule, but what most people don't know is that there are actually two 5-year rules. Mix these up, and you could end up owing a lot in taxes and penalties that you weren't expecting. So, in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk through those two different timers, a simple map, and a few quick wins that you can get today. If we haven't met before, my name is Barakat Khalili. I'm a financial advisor based out of Sacramento. Both my wife and my mom have worked for Kaiser for 20 years. My mom was an RN. My wife works in the lab. And I make these videos basically to help healthcare workers better understand their benefits and plan for and get through retirement as easily as possible. As I mentioned before, there's two Roth rules to make sure that you're aware of. The first one has to do with when your earnings become tax-free. And rule number two has to do with when your Roth conversions become penalty-free. So same Roth world, but two different timers, two different rules. And if you, as long as you get these straight, you'll be able to know exactly when your money can come out clean. Now, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with this in my 5 years as a financial advisor, helping someone unwind a really messy kind of mistake with Roths. But I know a lot of financial advisors who work with clients, and it obviously, unfortunately, has come up. And the way it looks is something like, imagine a case where you have a woman who's 58 years old who's been contributing to a Roth 401k for years, and she just assumes that her money is going to be tax-free because she's hit that 5-year window. She rolls her Roth 401k money into a Roth IRA, thinks that she can pull out the money tax-free, but finds out that there's going to be taxes and early withdrawal penalties. And all it took to prevent a mistake like that was just one simple but very powerful conversation with someone going through these rules. And so that's what the point of this video is going to be, to help you kind of prevent getting into a situation like that. Okay, so going back to those two rules I mentioned before, there's also, you want to be aware of two different Roth timers in your Roth world. Timer A, which is associated with rule number one, controls when the earnings come out tax-free. And timer B, which is associated with rule number two, is going to determine and tell you when you can pull that money out that you've converted into a Roth without the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Okay, so let's dive into rule number one. Again, the purpose here is to determine when earnings can come out tax-free as what we call a qualified distribution. There's two requirements that we need to keep in mind. One is that you've met one of these four kind of life events. You've turned age 59 and a half, you've died, you've become disabled, or you're a first-time home buyer and you're pulling out up to $10,000. Now, we're going to ignore those other three kind of hardship scenarios and just focus on kind of the normal conditions here. So that's requirement number one. Requirement number two is that you've met the 5-year test, which is 5 tax years have passed since your first ever Roth IRA was funded. Now, here's a few key notes I want to share with you from my notes that you want to keep in mind. The first is that the 5-year clock begins once the first ever Roth IRA is funded. So it doesn't matter how many Roth IRAs you open. If you go to open up another Roth IRA at another custodian, that doesn't reset the clock. So once that first IRA is funded, the Roth IRA is funded, the 5-year clock starts and it never gets reset. And it starts as of January 1 of that tax year in which you made the contribution. Now, because it's based on the tax year, that means that in a sense, you're able to kind of rewind time, because you can make a Roth contribution as late as April 15. So say you make a Roth contribution early April in 2025, and it gets counted towards 2024 tax year. Your contribution essentially, or your clock, I should say, starts as of January 1 of 2024. So get it in as soon as you can, but it's always assumed that January 1 is the starting point. Another point to keep in mind is that all Roth IRAs are aggregated together. So once the 5-year clock gets going, it never gets reset, even if you open up another Roth IRA at a different custodian or at a different place. Then lastly, your Roth 401k has a separate clock from your Roth IRA. So as I mentioned that case before, if you roll your money from a Roth 401k into an IRA, that clock doesn't continue with that rollover. That Roth IRA has its own clock, the 401k has its own clock, and the IRA does not inherit the Roth 401k clock. So the quick win here to keep in mind is that if you don't have a Roth IRA open, get it open as soon as possible. If you have a Roth 401k option available, I would probably also just make a contribution there just to get that clock started. And then that way, later on down the line, you're going to have, the most amount of flexibility possible. All right, so now let's talk about rule number 2, having to do with the conversion 5-year rule. Now, the purpose of this rule is to determine when you can pull out money that you converted into a Roth within, before or after that 5-year window, and whether the 10% early withdrawal penalty is going to apply, especially when we're talking about before you've reached age 59 and a half. That's going to be a key factor there that we'll talk about later on. A couple of things to keep in mind from my notes that I'll share with you. Each conversion is going to have its own 5-year clock. So, and that's going to be measured by tax years starting January 1, just like how we measure tax years under rule number 1. Then keep in mind that the rule is about the 10% early withdrawal penalty on conversion principal, not the income tax on earnings. That's going to go back to rule number 1. And then finally, age 59 and a half. This is an important milestone because once you've passed this milestone, the conversion withdrawal or the early withdrawal penalty is essentially a moot point. So after age 59 and a half, you never really have to worry about early withdrawal penalties on conversion. It's really now just about have the earnings sat in your Roth IRA for at least 5 years, so you don't have to get hit with the income taxes. So quick win here is every time you make a conversion, you want to make sure that you document this accurately and right away. Every time you do a conversion, you should be getting some tax documents like a 1099-R and a Form 5498, but it's good to have for your own personal records. Keep track in a spreadsheet somewhere with the various conversions that you've done, how much and in what tax year that's been done. So this is going to be really important later so that you can disentangle this and prove that you can pull the money out without early withdrawal penalties. So remember, make sure you have your receipts. So there are essentially 3 types of money in your Roth. There's contributions, conversions, and then earnings. So when you're taking money out of your Roth, how do you know which you're pulling from and in what order? Well, the IRS has kind of simplified things for us by standardizing an order withdrawal. And the way it works is, imagine a 3-layer cake or lasagna. The top layer is your regular contributions, right? And that's the money that as you pull money out, that's assumed to come out first. And that's always going to be tax-free and penalty-free. The next layer is going to be converted principal. And if you have multiple conversions, then it's going to be stacked from the oldest one first down to the most recent. And depending on where you are vis-a-vis that 5-year rule, you may or may not have that 10% early withdrawal penalty. And then finally, you have the earnings layer. And that's going to be money that, again, depending on going back to rule number 1, can be accessed either tax-free if you're past the 5-year window, or you might be hit with taxes and early withdrawal penalties if you're under age 59 and a half. So the quick win here is keep in mind that you do have some money in your Roth IRA that you can tap into should you need it. If you're in a pinch, in an emergency, and you need to get access to some money right away. If you've been keeping track of your conversions and your contributions, then you'll be able to know how much is available at what time without taxes or penalties. Now, with that being said, I wanted to walk through just a kind of a case study to help us kind of understand how it works, because that might be a little bit too abstract of an example. So imagine Alex, age 58, it's tax year 2025, and he has a Roth IRA. And we're going to look at a couple of different scenarios of him taking out different amounts of money and whether taxes or penalties apply. So to start with, as a base case, Alex needs $20,000 from his Roth. And in this first scenario, let's imagine that he has $30,000 in that top layer that he's contributed over the years. He has another $30,000 of conversions between 2 different conversions, one in 2019 for $10,000 and one in 2022 for $20,000. So the 2019 conversion will be available penalty-free after the end of 2023, and the 2022 conversion is going to be available after 2025 penalty-free. And he has, in that bottom layer, $15,000 of earnings. So in scenario A, say he wants to pull out $20,000. today. It's 2025 and he's 58. Well, following that IRS ordering rule, the distributions are going to come out of contributions first. So the first, since he's pulling out $20,000 and he already has $30,000 in contributions, the first $20,000 is going to come out of that top layer, and that's all going to be from that bucket where it's tax-free and penalty-free. So taxes are going to be zero, penalties are going to be zero, and he hadn't even touched the conversion principal or the earnings. Now, let's go to scenario B, where he wants to take out a bigger withdrawal of $40,000. Again, it's 2025. He's age 58. And let's go through the distribution order. First, he's going to pull that $30,000 in contributions out, right? And exhaust that tax-free, penalty-free. Then the remaining $10,000 is going to come out of that second layer with the conversions. And because it's $10,000 left, he can pull that 2019 conversion, the older one, the earliest one, and that one is going to be penalty free because remember, we are past 2023 and we're outside of that 5-year window. What that means is $30,000 contributions tax penalty free, $10,000 of converted principal penalty free, total tax zero, total penalty zero. Looks pretty good. Final scenario here, scenario C, where suppose that he's pulling out $70,000 from his Roth. Again, it's 2025. He's age 58. There's $75,000 there in the account. Now let's look at the ordering here in this scenario. First, we exhaust that first layer of $30,000 of contributions, tax-free, penalty-free. Then we get into the conversion layer. We're going to blow through that 2019 conversion with $10,000. No penalty there because we're past that 5-year window. Now we're going to come to that later 2022 conversion, which was $20,000. Now we're still in the 5-year window. So that means that we're going to get hit with that 10% early withdrawal penalty. Now we've gotten $60,000 total. We got another $10,000 to go. We're now down in the earnings layer, that at the bottom of the cake or the lasagna there. Now, are the earnings going to come out penalty or in tax-free? Well, if he opened that Roth IRA in 2018 or before, well, we've hit the 5-year window and passed it, so we're good there. But have we reached the age test of 59.5? No, we haven't. So because we haven't satisfied rule number 1, we're going to get hit with income tax on the earnings, and we're going to get hit with an early withdrawal penalty because Alex isn't 59.5 yet. So those are, total, contributions, one of those conversions is going to be tax-free, penalty-free, but we're going to have penalties and taxes on the other conversion and the earnings. This goes to show just a couple different scenarios of, how different amounts of withdrawals, and depending on how much is in your account between contributions, conversions, and earnings, are going to be available to you, and what penalties and taxes are going to apply to you. So we spent a lot of time talking about the tax rules that affect money that you're pulling out of your retirement accounts. But where's the best place to put your money into retirement accounts? Well, that's a separate conversation, but go ahead and check out this video where I walk through your traditional and your Roth options in your 401k and how to decide which option is best for you.